Hello, everyone. This is Coresair Mack, President of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association, and I am here with Fran Giordano. How are you doing today?
I am great.
All right, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So, a lot of people want to know, how did you become interested in counseling?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I feels like a long time ago now. So I have always been always kind of been interested in psychology, especially the science of psychology, how why people do what they do. And studied psychology as an undergraduate and even thought about and getting a doctorate in psychology. And then Um, I, was interacting so I'm trying to remember someone. Oh, I know, it was a counselor that I had worked with. I had worked with a counselor as an adolescent and had kinda stayed in touch with him, and he was probably the first person to really talk to me about, there's something more people-oriented, there's something more, like, relational, less science-y, and that's counseling. And so that's how I got interested. And then my childhood best friend and I had always thought that we would go to college together. We didn't go to college together, but we decided to get our master's degrees together. So I went back to Michigan. That's when I knew her. We went back to Michigan State, and got our master's in counseling there. So that started the whole thing.
All right. Well, I never heard anyone explain it that way before. Less sciencey, more people orientated. I'm going to use that one. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you already answered these. What school did you go to for your undergrad, graduate, and postgraduate degrees?
Yeah. So I
Mhm.
I let's see. So I started out. I came from a family that moved around a lot, so my degrees were all in different places. So my undergraduate I got at Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey.
Oh,
That's where I was. That's where I graduated from high school, was in New Jersey. And then I got my master's degree at Michigan State. And that was a story I just told. Went with my best friend, and I'd lived in Michigan as a kid, like from fifth grade to eighth grade. That's where I met her. So we went back, got my master's degree at Michigan State, and then got my doctorate at the University of Virginia.
okay. Wow, yeah, you have been all over
I
the
have
place.
been
You
moved. Yes, I
Yeah.
have moved around a lot,
All right.
especially then. Not so much lately, but especially then, a lot of moving around.
All right. So I guess a side note question, where was your favorite place to live?
Wow. So I loved Virginia. And actually, and my partner and I, we both loved Virginia. We're like in the process now of moving to Tennessee. And part of the reason why we're doing that is because it has a very Virginia-like feel. Like, you can't afford Virginia, but we can afford Tennessee, and it's a very Virginia-like feel, like beautiful weather, moderate weather, but still has seasons, and beautiful mountains, like the Blue Ridge Smoky Mountains there. So that was probably my favorite
Mhm.
place. Although I love Chicago too, because I'm also a city mouse, and I really like the city, and Chicago's a great. So I've also loved Chicago.
All right, perfect. Well, now we know. Move to Tennessee. It's a great place.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Politically a little iffy, but as far as the as far as the general weather and the mountains and everything, great.
Definitely. I'll have to check that place out for myself. I need to travel more places anyway. All right. So then how long have you been doing therapy for?
Wow. So, I graduated with my master's in '85, right? So that makes me feel super old. So I graduated with my master's in '85. So I actually have, been doing it since then, and then graduated my doctorate in '92. So now it's been like 30 years. Um, yeah,
Oh, nice. So you
yeah,
definitely have a wealth of information for all of us to learn from.
yeah. Thank you.
All right. So then, speaking of that wealth of information, this is something a lot of people struggle with, especially after they graduate and things like that. But what places did you work at starting off in your profession, and what did you learn as a result from working at those places?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I So I got my doctorate in counselor education and supervision. I always knew that I wanted to be a faculty member. Like, while I would very interested in working directly with clients, my heart has always been in training, in education and training, and helping people be really good therapists. So because of that, I was my career has been mostly been around being a faculty member, although I always saw clients the whole time. So I was faculty at Northern Illinois University. That was my first job, and I was there like probably 20 years, worked myself up from assistant, associate, full professor, then department chair, like did the whole faculty thing. Um, then got recruited away from there, built the counseling program, and got recruited away to work to build the program at Northwestern University. And then I was at Northwestern, built their counseling program. So they had a counseling psych program. They wanted to change it to counseling. At that point, I got very interested in program development. I had shifted a little bit my career into program development. And so was the program director there at Northwestern for 10 years, built their program, moved the program from an on-ground psychodynamically oriented on-ground program to an online program, because that was what was happening then. This is the beginning of the movement to online. Got very interested in that. Um, then retired as a counselor educator. That was in 2018. And um, then worked with some universities helping them build their programs, but I opened Veduta Consulting then. So Veduta is my downtown practice. And really then in retirement, what I decided was I had spent my career building programs for other people. It was time to do something, build something for myself. So
Mm,
I focused Veduta um, around what I wanted. So Veduta has, while it's a private practice, its specific focuses around mentoring. And so the people that work for me, that's what I do with them, is mentor them, help them build their practices. It is an extension of what I've always loved and I've always wanted to do, has always done. And then as far as what I've learned, yeah, that's a complicated question because I feel like I'm always learning something. Um, and so I think across all those things, really the primary thing I have always focused on, while I've gotten better at working with clients and especially psychodynamically, right? Being able to use myself, getting better at using myself relationally to work with clients. The real development for me has been the way I have learned to mentor and support counselors. That my whole career is about that. It's about mentoring, supporting counselors, helping them to be the best therapists they can be, helping them with their career development, helping them, like, that has been, and getting better and better at being able to do that is really what my whole career has been focused on.
yeah. Wow. That was great.
Yeah.
So you said something really interesting, true. Can skip the next question because that was what led you to start your own private practice. But you mentioned that your own private practice was more focused on mentoring.
Yes. Yeah. Even though we do what everybody else does, right? We see clients, take insurance, we do everything and have the same struggles that we all have around that. What makes I think my practice different is that my primary purpose, although I see my own clients and they all see their clients, really my primary purpose is to help them understand what it means to run a private practice and then mentor them into being able to do that themselves. So that's really the primary focus. And so a piece of that also is I began to do that in 2018. My mom died, and I was
Oh,
like a lot of women my age, I was primarily responsible for her care as she aged. And when that responsibility ended, that allowed me to then open Veduta. So that I think was another important piece for me of and it has a lot to do with the legacy of that. It's why it's focused on my Italian heritage. It's why, Veduta is an Italian word that means like new view, change. It focuses on change, new view. It's all of that was about moving myself in the direction of honoring my her and doing the things that was important to me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your mom.
Yep.
But oh,
It's developmentally, it was her time.
right, which is
Yeah,
100%
yeah,
understandable. Those sound like that was the framework that helped you open up your own private practice.
yeah,
So would you say then being more and then sorry, it's the last question I'll ask, and then I'll move on to the next one, but would you say that being more mentor focused presented its own challenges when you were opening up your own private practice, or would you say it was
yeah. Oh,
okay?
yeah, absolutely. I think the piece of it and the piece I continue to remain interested in is running a business using a very non-business model, like really trying to integrate building like the things that you get as a student, like the support from faculty and the mentorship from faculty, like being able to still do that while at the same time um having to do boss like things, right? Like hold people accountable and keep track of budgets. And so that's been the challenge for me, is try to create something with Veduta that feels different, that isn't like that traditional. Like,
Mhm.
does that make sense?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, that's great. So, a lot of people know you as the person that helps them pass their LCPC exam,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. My claim, yes, definitely my claim to fame. Yes. So yeah, 30 years of doing the same. I feel a little bit like, I don't know, do you know who Carol Channing is?
I believe so, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. So Carol Channing, um, she's a singer. She does musicals, and she
Oh,
spent
yeah.
her whole life. She did nothing her whole life from when she started until when she died. She only played one role, and that was the lead in Hello, Dolly. Like she was
Oh,
basically
yeah.
spent her whole career being the lead in Hello. And I feel a little bit like the Carol Channing of counseling. Like I've spent my whole career doing test prep workshops in Illinois,
Mhm.
right?
So what led you to want to do those? Because that doesn't sound like it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting. So, um, I think way back when, right? So we got licensure in Illinois, and I then took the exams, and it was clear to me, and they were looking for people to teach test prep workshops. So they were looking for counseling faculty to teach test prep workshops back then. And I think even IMHCA may have been the one to approach me about doing. But what was really clear to me was that it wasn't that this that the new professionals, it wasn't enough to just teach them to the test, like teach the content. It was also that the test was about teaching them to be able to think clinically. As frustrating as the exam can be for people, I think the thing they don't really understand is it is designed to help them think clinically. And so I got very energized by that. Like I can help people be able to understand how to manage their clients, to think clinically, to be intentional. And so I developed a strategy, a linking logic strategy based on that, to help people pass the exam. But my initial motivation was that I wanted to help people know that it wasn't just a barrier, although it certainly is a barrier. It wasn't just a barrier. It also was a way of helping them learn to think intentionally and clinically about working with clients.
All right, definitely. So I know a lot of MCA members definitely say after taking your course, before they take your course, they thought about the test one way. And then, just like what you
Yeah.
mentioned, after taking your course, they think about the test a whole different way. And some people that took it and failed and then took your course and then took it and passed, they definitely say you've helped them out a lot in regards to changing their thinking.
Yeah, I love that. To me, that feels like that's my motivation. Like even in moments like why would you do the same thing for such a long time, right? That's my motivation is really feeling like that I it really honestly helps people. And even like as the exam has changed, so now we're in a moment where the exam has changed and I told myself when the exam changed, that was it. I wasn't doing this anymore. And so actually Rachel, the executive director at IMCA, talked me into continuing to do test prep workshops on the new exam. And how did she do that? By saying, like, people need you,
Mhm.
so I not in an egotistical way, like just really like in a heartfelt way, that really matters to me. That piece of being helpful really matters.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said,
Yeah.
you helped out a lot of people pass their
Yeah.
LCPC exam,
Yeah.
so you're definitely needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
All right, so now that we get into more of helping people, a lot of people probably already know this, but you were actually IMCA president from 2001 to 2003, and then
Oh,
ICA president around the 2003 to 2006 era.
oh, so I got that mixed up. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. So then, what led you to want to run for IMCA and ICA president?
Yeah. Um, it felt like a natural outgrowth of of my leadership, like what mattered to me. Like what matters to me is counselors and counselor development. And I also was on the counseling licensure board, and so I was having an influence and effect on counseling, the way reimbursement and the way counselors are treated in Illinois. And I have always cared so deeply about that. And so it seemed like a natural outgrowth to get involved in professional associations, right? And have an impact that way. So it just felt like a natural piece of another aspect of my leadership. And other interestingly, the thing about being on the board, which is different than leadership in terms of running workshops or leaderships in terms of faculty, or the thing about being on the board and being ICA president and IMCA president is you work with teams of people, as you know, right? Like you work with a team, a leadership team. And it is those other things I've done, they're a little bit lonely. They're just like you do it. I do the workshops, even teaching, you have faculty around you, but it's not that same kind of team work feel. And I really liked that. And it also developed more skills in me, right? As you probably are aware, like it's really challenging to work on a leadership team, right?
Oh, yeah.
In a professional association. But I really liked it. I liked the idea of learning to do that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, so we're going to split this up between IMCA and ICA. So, with IMCA, if you remember, what are some accomplishments that you're the most proud of during your time as president, and what are some things you wish you had more time to work on?
Okay. So I remember IMCA a little bit better than I remember ICA, which it is, I'm not really sure why. Maybe because I stayed on the IMCA board. And so there was some continuity for me around. So I remember IMCA and my impact better. So the things that back then that we were really concerned about was licensure. And it was a time in which um, making decisions about expanding the licensure requirements so that other people who weren't counselors but met the educational requirements could also become licensed counselors. That was like the hot thing back then. And I really, really believed in that. And that it's actually even today, I think, a relatively controversial stance to take. That so my belief was that instead of being isolationist like social workers and psychologists are and saying no one else can be what we are, what I thought is that if you train people with the same content that counselors get, and then you allow them to become licensed counselors because they are learning what counselors know, that you actually have a positive impact on clients and you elevate the counselors because everyone then interacts with clients with the knowledge that counselors have, right? Like that was kind of so so that was very important to me. So one of the things I did on the IMCA board, along with being on the board for licensure, was about creating rigorous standards. It's not like anybody could be a counselor, creating rigorous standards, but also creating policies that would allow other people like marriage and family therapists, like art therapists, like dance therapists to be able to become counselors. And back then, that was very controversial, right? While also maintaining rigorous standards, like saying that you had to graduate from a counseling program, it had to have a certain set of courses in it. Back then it was 48-hour courses, like not allowing people, back then we didn't allow people to, it had to have a, you have to have a whole degree. Now you can add courses in, but back then you couldn't. So that's what I feel like my role on ICA had a lot to do with educating people around that, about advocating around that. Um, and then the other thing for both conferences, the thing that was really powerful for me was being able to develop a theme and run a conference. I thought that was, I loved doing that.
Right.
Um, and um, as far as what I felt like I didn't have enough time, so that's an interesting question because I actually, so I think both systems have the same structure where you're president-elect, president, past president, um, and that that gives you a lot of time. I actually don't feel like I didn't have enough time to do what I wanted to do. I really did feel like um I was able to accomplish what I wanted to. I
All right.
didn't feel. I don't think. So maybe my memory has changed over time, but I really look back on it. I don't think, "Oh, I wish I'd been there longer so I could do other things." I don't feel that. And I think maybe a piece of that is because I stayed on the IMCA board, right? So because I
Yeah.
stayed on the IMCA board, I was still having influence, right, on what I thought was important.
All right. Definitely. All right. So I know you mentioned you don't remember ICA as much as MCA, but I know you mentioned ICA a little bit in regards to advocacy. So,
Yeah,
what are
yeah.
some accomplishments you're most proud of as ICA
As
president?
ICA president, so the one thing I really remember about, I do remember one thing as we're talking about ICA president, and that is, it's interesting because it feels like, things that we worried about back then, we still worried about. We're still worrying about today, and that was disaffiliation. Like it was always a big issue of trying to keep the divisions together and trying to keep the school counselors with us and keeping people from, and even mental health at the time. There was a movement nationally to disaffiliate mental health divisions, right? And IMHCA wanted IMHCA to disaffiliate from ICA. And there was a movement back then, and definitely a movement where ASCA wanted social workers to disaffiliate. That was a really big deal in ACA at the time, and keeping the keeping all the divisions together, because in Illinois, which was always true back then and always true, is our ICA is so much stronger. Our state level division is so much stronger than other states. And I honestly believe that the strength was because we were all counselors. We weren't split up. We were all counselors. And we tried to serve all counselors. We tried to meet the needs of all counselors in different divisions. And so there was a lot of efforts put into that, which, it's interesting because it feels sad that really in the end, we couldn't save the school counselors, right? Like in the end, the school counselors did end up disaffiliating. And it's interesting. I feel sad about that. I think it's a mistake and I feel sad about it. But that was a big push back then.
All right. Definitely. And then, were there some things you wish you had more time to work on as ICA president?
Yeah, again, I don't. I don't remember feeling. I don't honestly. So maybe everybody else says they wish they could do other more have done other things, but I don't really remember feeling like I think because of that tiered experience.
Okay.
And then also, I feel a strong commitment. I think you probably have a sense of that. I feel a really strong commitment that organizations grow and develop because they get new blood, they get new leaders. And when leaders stick around too long, the organization stagnates. Like you need new people doing new
Mhm.
things, right? So
Right.
you have your time and then your time is over. And then great people like you then become leaders and you move forward on that.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Or maybe, you're just very efficient with your time,
Yeah.
right? Got everything you need to
Yeah.
accomplish accomplished.
Yeah.
Right. So then, going back to more of your knowledge and wisdom and expertise, right? So, is there anything you would like to tell people starting out in the field or who have been in the field for a while?
Yeah. What do I want to tell people? Um, it is interesting that another issue as I think about it about ICA back then and was counselor identity, right? The emphasis on understanding and seeing yourself as a counselor. And um and I even though I believed that we were stronger when we allowed other people to meet our educational requirements and get our license. I really have always believed in the strength of counselor identity and the strength of our training and a way in which our training does because we're rooted in the understanding of development rather than psychopathology, that there's and so in that comes an emphasis on career, an emphasis on multicultural, an emphasis on human growth. And I worry that we are losing that a little bit because of this emphasis on which I know people need. I mean, we all have to earn a living and you have to work with insurance companies to earn a living. So I think the thing that I would really hope counselors would continue to hold on to is understanding that just because you have to diagnose clients and you have to treat symptoms, that you don't lose a deep theoretical understanding. So, right, including an understanding of relationship and the way to work the relationship in therapy, and also an understanding of development of humanness, right? So that's what I would hope that they would learn and remember,
Alright, definitely.
right?
Yeah, I
I think
agree
that,
100%.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's what I've always thought that if you can hold on to that, that's really what makes us different,
Mhm.
right? Um,
All right.
yeah.
So, before the last and most important question, is there anything that you would like to say that I haven't had a chance to ask you
No,
about?
this has been great. I've really enjoyed it. This has been great. Give me an opportunity to think back on those things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Um, Yeah, maybe I just put a little plug in. I'll put a little plug in about like one of the things that's really important to me is my work, being able to work with clients relationally and deeply. And I worry sometimes that what comes along with insurance reimbursement and what comes along with is forgetting how important how healing and important our relationship is with clients and really recognizing the ability to work deeply with them. I think that's why that psychodynamic emphasis is so important to me. And I get really upset when people think that this is not what counselors do. They don't do psychodynamic work. Don't work deeply. It's just not true. And I think so that piece feels really important. It's also been a piece always of my career. I've always emphasized the psychodynamic training. So I think just get a little plug in there about that.
All right, definitely. I appreciate it. All
Yeah.
right. So, now the most important question, all right? Where can people find you if they have additional questions or want to connect with you?
Oh, so I love connecting. I love connecting with people. So now, of course, I'll be inundated with 1,000 people, but I love connecting. And I almost always, when I have time to do that, I always respond to people's emails and connect with them. And the nice thing about being retired is that sometimes, even though still running a practice and all that, but I am to some extent somewhat retired. I have time to do stuff like have coffee with people, and so I love that. So they always can get a hold of me through Veduta, right? Through my email, through Veduta, and then also always through Rachel at ICA, always knows how to, through IMCA, always knows how to get a hold of me.
Mhm.
Um, so,
All right, perfect.
okay.
All right, so if you guys wanna get over again, I believe you do have a website, right? Faduda.
Yes, I do have a yes, Veduta Consulting. So yeah, vedutaconsulting.com.
All right, perfect. Oh, sorry, you're gonna say something else?
Yeah, you know what? I was gonna just put in a little plug too about
Mhm.
because I know you interviewed Jennifer, right? You've interviewed Jennifer Frommel already? Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe she talked about this already. But Jennifer and I are working on a project that feels really important to me that ICA and IMCA are sponsoring called Getting Paid. And what we are doing is a series of videos where a panel is interviewed by LPCs, and it's an emphasis on the what you need to know from the moment that you graduate until the moment that you get your first job. Right. So you probably experienced, like everyone experiences, this is an incredibly complicated, confusing time. Like you graduate and then you don't know like what how do I get my license? What do I can when I do with my license? What can I do? Can I get reimbursement? Where do I go to get my first job? If I work in private practice, like what can I ask for? How do people pay me? How do I, build how do I choose a good job? How do I build my caseload? Who supervises me? How do I fill out the paperwork for licensure? Like people have a million questions. So we're doing a series of videos called Getting Paid. We just finished the first episode, and now we're starting to video the second one. So I'm really excited about that. So you can get a hold of the video through IMCA, or you can also get a hold of the video through me. So it's on my website. And so that I'm really super excited about. I wanted to be sure to mention that.
Oh, yeah, definitely, and I have watched the video. You guys talk about a lot of great and interesting
Yeah,
things.
did you like it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
Very informative.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad. With all that material, it's so complicated, and I think one of the things we were trying to model was that people have different opinions about
Mhm.
what you're supposed to be doing, and that's why we instead of written form, we decided to do something where you would hear different people talk. So, I worried that it might be either boring, or it might one worry was it be boring, and the other worry is that it would be so complex and confusing that people would be like, what are they talking about? So I appreciate the feedback that you liked it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Could be
Okay.
a good coffee and counselors type of thing happening there, so
Yeah.
that could be
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah. Good, good, good.
All right. Other than that, is there anything else you wanna say
No,
to all
this
your
has been
fans out
great.
there?
Nope, this has been great. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
no
you.
problem. All right, everybody, and that's it for this interview. Again, Fran, thank you very much. Hopefully, we can come
Sure.
back and do it again sometime.
Right. Bye-bye.
All right. Again, thank you guys very much, and I'll see you at the next interview. Take care.